Well, the Eagles just lost a home game for the first time in over a calendar year, and they might have a bigger problem than we anticipated, so it's time to have a serious conversation about where things are at 5 weeks in. In this video, I'll go over the offensive game plan, why it went wrong in the second half versus Denver, and Saquon sharing that Jalen Hurts is drawing up plays. Plus, the O-line admitted something a little surprising, and what happened to the suffocating defense? Meanwhile, there's still plenty of reasons for optimism, so let's talk about that and everything else from Week 5. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? Well, the Eagles did mostly all the same things they've been doing, and it finally came back to bite them. They couldn't sustain drives, they committed too many penalties, they couldn't stop the run, they didn't pressure consistently enough, and they fell apart late in the game, resulting in blowing a 14-point fourth-quarter lead to end a franchise record of 10 straight wins. So yeah, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow for anyone. But the hope and optimism is that all these deficiencies popping up again result in meaningful changes.
Certain things don't get you until they get you. And so we got to go back and really learn from this, take ownership for the things that we can control, look into our process and our system and see what needs to be reset and what doesn't need to be reset and continue to press forward.
Self-inflicted wounds, clean that up, and if they make plays, they're going to make plays, they're in the NFL too. But, we got to come out and not let whatever defense dictate what we do on offense and just really just have urgency about it, getting it fixed. Unfortunately, this loss sucks. Last week I said we learned from winning or we learned from losing. So now we're on the other side of it, and so now we have another opportunity. We have another opportunity, short week, to turn it around and get this thing going.
By the way, let me make sure and give credit to the Broncos because they got the win. They made enough plays, regardless of, we'll get into everything else, but whatever you may think about the game, the Broncos made enough plays. And also, shout out to you guys for saying some of the concerns. I was being hesitant for the first couple weeks because, figure out what this team is. Don't need to have too much immediate knee-jerk reactions. But it seems like, some of you might have been a little justified based on what happened on Sunday.
It takes something to admit you were wrong.
It does, but I still have plenty of hope. But let me ask you, what is it then that cost the Eagles the most on Sunday? Take a second and think about that one, and then let me know the biggest reason in the comments. Because for the record, I still haven't heard from Mames571 to claim this piece, and normally we do the ticket giveaway when the Eagles win. Unfortunately, they did not. But if I don't hear from Mames after this video, I'm going to give this away to someone else in the comment section of this video. So drop a like, drop a comment, get yourself a chance to win this one. I'll ask again, what was it that cost the Eagles the most on Sunday? Personally, I might have to go with the very clear and obvious Zebras collusion to win the game for Sean Payton that did it for me.
Before God, I swear I'll see every last one of you thrown in jail.
Truthfully, Philly didn't exactly deserve to win this game with all the mistakes they made. However, when you see the reactions to all the missed calls, it kind of does make you wonder what else might have been going on. Heck, you had former Eagles and Broncos cornerback Bradley Roby tweeting out that the NFL is obviously cheating for the Broncos with all those calls.
You're acting like a child.
Maybe I am, and I'll admit, I don't try to hide my bias, but for a player who played for both of those previous teams to come out and publicly say that carries a little bit of weight. Like, okay, fine. You think about the Hurst to Jihaad dot that was ruled incomplete, or the late 30-yard strike on 4th and 4 that was called for an illegal shift, and whatever. We can agree to disagree there. However, on the Cooper DeJean strip sack of Bo Nix, that one even had the 33rd team's Sam Monson fired up, saying this is a call invented by slow-mo replay. You can only come close to arguing this isn't a fumble by framing a super slow-mo replay. Any other view, it's a clear fumble. And yeah, the fact that it was ruled a fumble on the field makes it a little bit crazy to think that it was clear and obvious enough for them to overturn it and say it was incomplete. Heck, that's not even getting into the intentional grounding call where the refs called intentional grounding, announced it, then huddled up and decided to pick it up without telling anyone. Although the NFL did offer clarification afterward from referee Adrian Hill in that he said he couldn't hear his other officials say a player was in the area first, so he threw the flag for grounding, but then picked it back up once they got together to discuss.
You couldn't make this stuff up.
Again, there were some horrendous calls, but like I said, the Eagles beat themselves. And yes, that's despite the BS 15-yard penalty call on Zack Baun and the blatant defensive pass interference on Dallas Goedert that was not called.
I will start by addressing the elephant in the room, which is the DPI, which was not called on the 4-yard line. That game probably should have came down to one play at the 4-yard line for the game, and it didn't. And, that's a shame.
Now we have adversity, really adversity. Like our first real adversity, like we lost a football game. We haven't lost a football game since Washington last year. So We got a lot of guys banged up. We got to get healthy, and we got to come to work. That's the thing we have about this team, though. We got a lot of great leaders and a lot of great talent, but we have super competitive people, too. And it's not going to sit well with anyone in this locker room.
By the way, I totally understand your feelings in the conspiracy of Roger Goodell because he hates the Eagles and the tush push. But if we're being honest and looking ourselves in the mirror, the last thing we need to do is be blaming anybody else for the defeat.
Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
Let's face it, the Eagles have been penalty prone all year, and it finally cost them. Now sure, the Broncos did end up with more penalty yards than Philly, but when you look at the timing of those penalties, that might be what hurt the most. For instance, holding on Brett Toth to wipe out a big first down run by Saquon Barkley, illegal man downfield on Tyler Steen to erase a first down completion to Devonta Smith, the illegal shift by Saquon to wipe out a 30-yard gain to Devonta Smith, plus the countless pre-snap penalties, all unavoidable. I mean, you realize the Birds had 5 pre-snap penalties in the game, and that all comes down to the players with their attention to detail and focus.
Lack of execution. Lack of execution.
In the most simplistic terms, sure, that's what got the Eagles. It was execution, it was attention to detail, the players are to blame, but there's plenty of blame to go around for everyone. Which, unsurprisingly, when you talk about attention to detail, that starts with the coaching staff having the players ready and locked in. So yeah, it's understandable to have some frustration on boneheaded penalties or momentary lapses in focus. Although personally, I'm not buying into this notion that keeps getting thrown around of Sirianni being the problem or that we're in the same kind of trash we were in 2023.
Don't you put that on us!
I would also say please stop with the fire Kevin Patullo comments. Because while KP definitely needs to improve, he wasn't the only reason the offense struggled. Plus, for the sake of the argument, let's say Kevin Patullo is not the answer. Fine. In the middle of the season, at this point right now, who's available out there, you think that you're going to go out and hire a new offensive coordinator, bring them in, get adjusted to the offense, and it's going to be better than Kevin Patullo? Look, I know it's not good. I'll 100% give you the argument that KP needs to find an identity, and he needs to find it fast. Especially since right now, it's as if they're catering to the demands of not throwing it enough or being aggressive, which in turn has led to them overcompensating to appease the critics.
Forget who I am?
Every game dictates different things, Dave. Like yesterday, we saw opportunity in the pass game to be able to take advantage of a couple things and a couple matchups that we were getting. I think for a majority of the first half and even into the second drive of the first drive in the second half, we were having a lot of success with that, throwing for 200 plus yards there. And a little bit over 2 quarters of work, and then some other things, that happened that we didn't finish out that game. But I think that every game calls for something different.
You are allowed to put together an offensive game plan that has more balance and running and passing and better things like that, but we just didn't see it. I am still believing in it, but yes, at the same time, he's got to be better and find a whole lot better balance on offense. I mean, let's keep it real. With the skill players the Eagles have on offense, they should be scoring over 30 points a game, and they're only at 22 per game right now. Granted, back when I made a video to break down the potentials of KP's offense in the summer, I brought up then how Chan Gailey was someone who KP admitted had the most influence on him for style and play calling. And if you know anything about Gailey or watched that video, then a lack of identity or taking longer to figure that out for Patullo isn't completely shocking.
I've never felt like I had a great handle on Chan. I feel like he does a lot of things. And a lot of things based on personnel. I've always felt that Chan had a lot of versatility to him and a lot of different looks. But I'm being honest, Chan I always felt was a little difficult for me to truly get a handle on. I never felt like I could say, oh, this is what Chan Gailey does. I know that for sure.
I said it back then and I'll say it again. The unknown of what the Eagles are going to do, the unpredictability, could be a weapon. You just have to be aggressive and dictate terms. Which is why you're right that it doesn't excuse some situational play calling. I mean, my gosh, Philly's offense ran 24 plays in the second half. 1 of those was a designed run and 23 were passes. Or I guess technically 2 were designed runs, but 1 came back due to a penalty. Now, FYI, important to note, some of those were RPOs, so you could just say maybe, not all play calling, but for Saquon to finish with just 6 carries in a game when you're up by 14 in the second half is wild. Now, in all fairness, on the flip side, the running game has not been working at all. So I somewhat understand if KP knows his guys are going to get blown up on plays like this one where Cam Jurgens did and is a little bit, hesitant to dial that one up.
Just call it.
The bigger issue for me is that Saquon only touched the ball 9 times. Now, yes, it's still an issue to not run the football when you're up that much. They're struggling to do it, but that's the biggest issue. He only got 9 touches, which, by the way, is the fewest amount of touches he's had in his entire career for a game that he started and finished. Like, I'm sorry, but unless Saquon was hurt, the Eagles were up 17-3 halfway through the third quarter, and then proceeded to call 8 straight pass plays over 2 drives that both resulted in punts and only took 3 minutes off the clock.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home?
By the way, maybe give Patullo a little bit more of a pass because it turns out that Saquon was dealing with a knee injury he suffered and had an estimated designation of DNP if the Eagles had practiced on Monday. Now, you can relax though, it doesn't sound like it's anything too significant and he should end up playing on Thursday. Anyway, it's never one thing. No matter how bad it's been for play calling, the offensive line has probably been worse. Which is crazy to say, but heck, Brett Coleman even brought this one up, that I don't know how much the Eagles expect Tyler Steen to actually be able to dig anyone out in the run game if he's going to be standing up this straight before snapping the ball. I mean, I know he's got to tap the center there, but low man wins, and aside from the tush push, Jeff Stoutland's unit has been getting really pushed around. Come on, it's blatantly obvious by now that the Eagles cannot run the football, and they've also been giving up a ridiculous amount of pressures and sacks. In case you were curious, they're now tied for the 8th worst in terms of sacks and giving up one of the quickest pressure rate percentages out of any team in the NFL. Although, judging by several comments on the streams and social media, you'd think that's also Kevin's fault.
Nice try, Kevin. Nice try.
Okay, there's some answers that make the Eagles' life a little bit easier, but this next one here, you just really need some time, and the guy's got to get healthy. With the Inquirer's Jeff McClain sharing that Cam Jurgens acknowledged he's still recovering from off-season back surgery, saying that while every game is getting a little bit better, it's also football, so you have to go out there regardless if you're 100% or 60%. Which I hear that and go, okay, so does that mean he's at 60%? He's definitely not 100%. We know from Landon Dickerson that he's clearly not 100%. I'll get to him in a second. Lane Johnson's banged up and injured. Tyler Steen, he had the knee injury. It's a really banged up offensive line and more than the Eagles are telling us. Also, regardless of if it's injury or not, you'd have to be blind to not see regression from this O-line the first quarter of the season. And then when it comes to Landon Dickerson, he could miss the Giants game with an ankle injury he suffered against the Broncos, but honestly, that might be a good thing. Seriously, I'm at the point right now to give the dude some rest so he can get right and not do more harm than good. Plus, Jordan Mailata revealed late last week that this past offseason took a much bigger toll on him than in years past, suggesting that the 621 rushing attempts across the regular season and last year's postseason is really getting underestimated. With Mailata saying it typically takes a week or two for the aches and pains to go away, but this past one lasted over a month and well into OTAs. Not gonna lie, that's concerning, yes, but also it makes a whole lot of sense based on what we've seen so far this season. Now, the hope is obviously that it comes together and starts to click like we know it can, but at this point, the Eagles aren't even close to the best offensive line in football category. Of course, relax, there are some answers. We're going to get into that, but at the same time, there's definitely a good bit of overthinking when it comes to the offense. Because when it comes to formations, there's really no excuse for Patullo to never go empty with the offense or run Hurts on designs quarterback runs. After all, when they go that route this season, they grade it out as a top 4 offense in terms of EPA, whereas when they go bunched formation, they rank 27th. I mean, it's like Kevin Patullo was handed the keys to the ultimate driving machine with a roadmap to success, but is refusing to get out of first gear at times.
I'll put you. Learn how to drive. I drive airplanes and bulldozers. I'd drive you crazy if you give me a chance.
Well, he has definitely been successful in driving a lot of people crazy, that is for sure. Although to his credit, the game plan and initial script has continued to show improvements. It's just once the defense adjusts, he seems to have a hard time making adjustments himself or having answers quickly and then ultimately keeping the offense dead in the water.
Stop yelling at me! No, it's stop yelling! There's no room here!
You may want to argue this, but it was better. Like the positive improvement we saw in Week 5 was the toss play from shotgun that went for 17 yards, followed by a fake of that play on the next series, and then hitting Goedert to make the defense pay. We also saw play action out of pistol, which we'd never seen. We saw a few other play actions as well, a little bit more motion. It's not earth-shattering, it's not the answer clearly, but it's in the right direction. Still though, it's not 2023, and I'll continue to say that. But I do see a couple of the concerns that a few of you have been bringing up recently. Mainly going off the fact that it feels like Denver put an exclamation point on the blueprint to beat the Eagles like the 49ers did in 2023, just not to the extreme, so relax, don't freak out. Still, Philly needs to make some changes, and I'll share what I mean by that. So in the first half, the offense was cooking and KP was in his bag. Granted, the vast majority of what the Broncos were doing was in man coverage with some blitzes mixed in throughout the first 30 minutes. However, after the opening drive touchdown from Philly, Vance Joseph called zone coverages on 13 straight Eagles dropbacks in the second half and didn't give up a single first down during that stretch. And if you're wondering the secret for why that worked, zone coverage combined with sim pressures. Remember, it's the same thing Tampa Bay started doing in the second half against the Eagles that really slowed down Jalen. So yeah, much like in Week 4, Week 5 was the same. Like, check out this specific play here. Denver's showing pressure, but instead they bail out right at the snap into zone coverage and only send 4 guys. Now, play calling has several examples where it could be better, but this O-line play is inexcusable. I mean, you have at least 5 blockers with only 4 guys who ultimately rush, yet 2 defensive players run in virtually unaccounted for. Like, it'd be one thing if it was just blocking or just communication, but this entire unit is all out of whack, and that might be the most alarming. Again, the Eagles are going to have to figure out a way to beat this. Zone coverage and sim pressures. If they don't figure this out, other teams are not going to run man coverage. So like we saw, instances of teams trying to manipulate this, there's no reason that teams will not just say, hey, we're going to say zone coverage all game long, sim pressures, because Philly clearly has not shown that they can beat it yet. After all, 14 plays that resulted in just 3 yards before their final possession is pretty pathetic. Plus, in the last 2 weeks, the Eagles have had 11 possessions in the second half after taking a double-digit lead, yet they've averaged just 2 yards per drive, scored 7 points, and have had 8 3-and-outs.
The most predictable offense in the NFL right now, one of them. I mean, if the Eagles are in the shotgun on first and second down, they're throwing the ball. They don't ever play under center anymore, and if they do, it's a guaranteed run, it feels like. And then what happens is early downs are killing this offense. They're not good on early downs right now, which is something they dominated in last year. So on early downs, they're behind the chains, and then they get into obvious second and or third downs, passing situations, and they're not built to handle all those different disguises.
It's a lazy excuse to put it all on one guy, and it's also not an accurate one. By the way, for the ground game, Saquon was held under 100 yards 4 times last season, and he's already been held to that 5 times this year. So I have no problem admitting the Eagles' offense has completely lost its identity in 2025, or at least the one we've grown accustomed to. Meanwhile, Nick Sirianni is saying obviously they want to run the ball more than they've been able to. And although while they haven't proven it, whether it be play calling or execution or injuries or whatever else, Philly still believes in the run game's ability to close out games.
Given what type of team we're built to be, you got to be able to establish the run in some regard, and that could look different. It may not be what it's been, but ultimately being able to lean on the run game is important. And so we just got to, look into how we can improve in that arena and go out there and take ownership for the things that we can control and grow from this opportunity.
No pun intended here, but losing Mekhi Becton might have been the biggest loss of the offseason for the Eagles. I know his pass blocking has been suspect in LA, and it depends on the scenery, yet there's no denying the insane impact the Mountain had on the Birds' ground game. Still, though, personally, I gotta believe it's the injuries and limitations of some of the guys that's hurting the rushing attack and not allowing for the full playbook to open up. Speaking of that, I said last week how I could understand how A.J. Brown was upset. Not really completely in favor of how he handled it, but was 100% validated. However, this week was inexcusable, with A.J. not giving complete effort and clearly costing the Eagles 7 points by slowing up when he had the defense beat on a deep ball.
You either hit it or you don't, and we didn't hit that one. And so we watch the tape when we get the opportunity to, and we learn from that. But in that moment in the game, it's about finding a way to put the dagger in them, and that definitely could have been the dagger in the game. But learn from it.
From my point of view, we just missed.
It looked like you slowed up on the play. Did you not think the ball was coming your way, or what happened with that?
It's not that I didn't think the ball was coming. When I looked up, I didn't see the ball, and I looked back, I didn't see the ball, and then the ball was thrown. So, like I said, we just missed.
Did you guys talk after the play about maybe miscommunication? What happened?
No.
You got to admit, it's a little bit ironic that AJ said the offense stalled, yet there he was stalling his route. And not that it matters too much now, but I'm not entirely sure his whole story checks out about looking back multiple times. Either way, honestly, look, 1 in 11 have got to get on the same page, which is kind of what I feel like Devonta Smith was saying afterward for some guys being out of sync. I mean, seriously, you watch the film and see connections to all the other receivers, and something just seems off. Fortunately, we got some really good news, though, because it sounds like things did get figured out thanks to Saquon. As Jimmy Kempski reported that Jalen, AJ, and Saquon had a very productive meeting to iron out some things that lasted a couple hours on Monday. And I think we all know this, but that is massive in terms of this team's chemistry and using this loss as a motivator. Especially because Johnny Page's drinking game idea was going to take us all out. Saying take a shot every time an Eagles skill position player jogs when he isn't the first read.
Why is the rum always gone?
A lot of what the Birds are doing just needs to be done quicker. Shout out to Dennis Selman, but the Eagles snapped the ball with 5 or fewer seconds on the play clock against Denver at a higher rate than any team in the NFL in a game in the last 3 seasons. Also, I wish that was an outlier, but turns out 4 of their last 5 games have been similar. And when you take that into account, along with Jordan Mailata calling out the operation this past week to say they were working on that to get the play calls in faster and get to the line faster, that's a little disappointing.
If we operate a little faster, get to the ball, we can maybe avoid some of that. Yeah, I think that's relative, right? Yeah, I get to play, I go make the play happen. So I can't point the finger at anything else, or the calls getting in on time or anything like that. You know, it's just about making it work.
There's so many things that go into that. I feel like I didn't feel, obviously we had the one that was a huge one on 4th down, where we got up and kind of snapped it on one. A lot of things that go into that. Again, we're doing everything we can do to, find solutions, not assign blame. And we're a team, we're together. So it's always going to be an us thing.
Sadly, this is probably an area that Patullo's hurting in terms of being a first-time play caller. Total speculation, but not much else has changed as far as the timing of getting plays in. By the way, in case you're curious about why it's important to get the calls in quicker, it allows the offense to see what the defense is presenting and then potentially have time to change the play. Something that paid huge dividends when they did have time to start in the second half when Hurts checked into a play that he drew up.
2nd and 4, flinging it, caught. On the run is Barkley, he's in for a touchdown.
Unfortunately, that was the last score for the Eagles. 17 points, that's all it was. Only able to take 9 minutes or so off the clock in the next 5 possessions. I mean, there were about, 12 minutes left in the third quarter? 5 possessions, only 9 minutes. It's no wonder the defense was tired and needed a breather. Now, kudos to the defense for not leaning into that excuse and saying they have to be better. Yet AJ afterwards said the offense put too much pressure on their own defense, and that's what ultimately cost them. And he's kind of got a point, because the Eagles had a suffocating defense that allowed just 168 yards, 3 points, and 10 first downs, along with allowing just 1 for 8 on third down conversions. However, after halftime and as they wore down, they eventually gave up drives of 64 and 72 yards with 10 first downs on those 2 drives alone. Still, I'm not panicked at all about this defense, even though, yes, it was Quinyon Mitchell's worst game of the season by far. He will be better. I don't know if it's the hype or whatnot. Cortland Sutton made some plays. Bo Nix, give credit to them, but I'm not concerned about Q. We got to remember, though, this whole thing is connected. Last year, the Eagles wore down teams and held onto the ball to give the defense a break and keep them fresh. It's just, unfortunately, they can't get the ground game going. Meanwhile, the run defense for Vic Fangio might be the biggest concern on that side of the ball. Not sure if you realize this, but they've allowed at least 100 yards in all 5 games and at least 4.5 yards per carry against everybody other than the Bucs. And you really started to see that play out later in the game against the Broncos.
Broncos began running the ball a little bit better. Nice job sealing the backside right here with Adkins and McGlinchey and the mighty Quinn, and Dobbins goes for 17 yards. You watch this right here. Pat Bryant, excellent on these toss cracks. Excellent blocks at the point. Right there on Cooper DeJean. That gets McGlinchey out. Now they're just picking him off. And right there, Harvey goes for 8 yards. They found a play. They found a couple plays. First play of the fourth quarter, they never panicked. You watch right here, and here you go. This is excellent inside. Wattenberg and the mighty Quinn getting great movement, great push. Bowles cutting off, and there goes Dobbins. They didn't run for a lot of yards, but they didn't panic. When they had to score to cut the lead to 17-10, they ran. Dobbins right up the middle right here. Excellent job. Here comes Powers on the power. Powers, touchdown. All right, 17-10. Now, on the edge, Pat Bryant was excellent. His blocking, all right, it's all it takes. Good body shot gets McGlinchey out, and here comes Harvey for 6 yards. They didn't run for a lot. Obviously, Cortland Sutton was huge, but I thought they started asserting themselves on the offensive line in the second half of this game.
I'm going to be curious to see if teams start using a 6th offensive lineman, because the Broncos did that in this past game. And if teams start, feeling like they can impose their will physically, they may start doing more of that. However, it's not all negative, so let's try to keep this thing in perspective. For one, Azeez Ojulari played really well in his first official action with the Eagles, and Zadarius Smith made a big-time play for the lone sack in the game. Granted, you do have to wonder if Howie isn't settled and is going to make a move, especially with the Dolphins losing another game this past week to drop to 1-4 against the Panthers. Just saying, Jalen Phillips is not a Pro Bowler in the making, but he might be the best, most realistic option at this point. Anyway, let's wrap this thing up on a positive note. take it a little bit of time, may take a little bit here, but take some time, think about this. What's the positive? What's the benefit, the optimism coming away from a loss? A loss sometimes can be good, but what's the biggest positive coming away from the Week 5 loss? Personally, I don't think anyone felt like we'd go 17-0, so 4-1 is still a solid spot to be in. Heck, after the Buffalo loss to the Patriots, there's no undefeated teams in the league anyway. Plus, Philly shares the best record in the NFC and is sitting atop the division by a game. So come on, the Eagles have everything in front of them, and it's now time for them to respond.
It's not a capability thing. We don't have a capability issue. We know what we're capable of. We're just not doing those things yet, but we will.
Fortunately, this might not have been a better scenario to have the Giants coming in on a short week, a chance to just completely get that bad taste out of your mouth. And we know the track record against New York. Yes, you can't lose that one, but this is the opportunity here. So I don't know, maybe let's play a game that doesn't come down to the final few minutes for a change. Not saying it'll be the same, but last year's Giants game in Week 7 was the first one the Birds won by multiple possessions all season long. So, for people counting out there, it's not like we were beating the brakes off teams by this point last season. Anyway, I expect some changes, maybe some moves. We'll keep you posted. Make sure to like and subscribe so you stay up to date, and I'll catch you on the next one. This has been the Philly Special.
Like I should feel